Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations, where we talk about Spiritism in an unscripted fashion. We are here at our inaugural episode with Suzana Simoes from Florida, Flavio Zanetti from Boston, and I am Daniel Assisi from California. We will get a chance to meet everybody that's here on our podcast today in a little bit, but there is one common thread that connects us all, and that is Spiritism. So we are going to talk a little bit about what Spiritism is and what it means to us and how it's potentially changed our lives as well. But before we do that, I want to just make sure we take some time to give folks who are listening to us, who decided to invest some of their time, to actually find out who we are. So how about we start with Mr. Flavio Zanetti this time?
Sure, no problem. Flavio Zanetti here from Boston, Massachusetts. Being born in a Spiritist family, my parents actually met inside the Spiritist Center 40 plus years ago. I've had the pleasure to work at the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts for the last 16 and a half years, holding several positions from treasurer, coordinating lectures, activities, study groups, and etc. Besides that, there's also a couple of other Spiritist works that I'd like to mention, namely the Spiritist Family Retreat, an event that we gather at least 27 Spiritist societies across the northeast part of the United States. And we do a one-day at-a-park event to bring all the families together.
Hi, I'm Suzana Simoes, and I am from Miami, Florida. I was born in a Spiritist family, and I've been in Miami since 1994. We founded with some friends the Conscious Living Spiritist group, and I have also been involved in the activities with the Spiritist Federation of Florida in several capacities, and also enjoy very much traveling, visiting other groups, and doing talks where we always have the opportunity to share a little bit of what we know, but most importantly, be with our friends and learn. And I really want to say that this has been a project that we've thought for a really long time, Daniel, myself, and now we have Flavio with us. So I'm thrilled, very excited to be able to be here with these guys and to be able to put our first podcast on.
That's great. Thanks for being here, guys. And I'm Daniel Assisi, and I currently live in San Diego after a stint in LA. I was also born in Brazil, and I'm also a Spiritist. I was raised in a Spiritist family. And I also have the chance every once in a while to meet you guys in different Spiritist events throughout the country and to speak at different groups. And if you're listening to us, we should say that there isn't necessarily anything special about us. We are not great authorities on philosophy, religion, or science, but nevertheless, we love studying Spiritism, and that's why we're here. And we've had the pleasure of talking about it quite a bit at different corners of the country, which is always great, and to meet each other. So it's great to, like Suzana said, to actually make this happen. We bought a microphone. We have some time. We're meeting now in Atlanta and to talk about Spiritism. So let's dive into it. And as you can probably tell, we don't have a really scripted format. We wanted to be this to be as organic and natural as possible, exactly because we love having conversations with each other. So we wanted to replicate that with you guys who are listening to us. So I guess the original question is, what is Spiritism?
I'll just throw this out there. Instead of going to the question, there's a formal answer for that question. But I wanted to say that Spiritism, at least to me, it's the lens through which I see pretty much everything, right? My relationships with people, with my family, with my wife, with my two 3-year-old twins, with my friends. It's the relationship that I see with my Creator, my God, right? Our Heavenly Father. It is that lens that really guides my actions, how I perceive things, how I see things, pretty much how I behave as a person. It really gives me that momentum or that push to try to be a better person day in, day out, every day.
No, that's great, Flavio.
Beautiful.
Imagine that, an American or anyone who knows nothing about Spiritism walks in here, asks you precisely these questions, and do you have an idea what you told them? Basically nothing, my friend. Basically nothing.
You said how you use
Come
Spiritism and
on.
how that
Yeah.
changes your life, and that's great. But
Right.
we're going to pick on you. You still haven't told us what Spiritism is. So what is Spiritism? What do you think it is, Suzana?
So, yeah, but, even though I'm picking on you, I must say that this is a very difficult answer in some ways. It's kind of easy, but also hard. And often in our English groups, when we're dealing with the non-Portuguese speakers, they ask us, my friend has asked me and I'm trying, and all I can do is like giving them these like really long answers because there's not like a short answer. And so I don't also have a short answer, but basically the way I go is I say, well, this is a philosophy and it's a way, so in that sense I agree with Flavio, a way of living that was born from some scientific work through the observation of a spiritual type of phenomena, and that ultimately has some religious consequences, some ethics and moral consequences for the individual. And then after I say that, I usually go into the aspects of the philosophy. So I tend to explain what the philosophy is about, starting with the fact that we are immortal beings, that life goes on, what the purpose of life is. So we are created with the purpose of achieving the ability to love unconditionally and full consciousness, that kind of stuff. And then, you can, depending on the person, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're dealing with someone who is, I don't know, the person would basically freak out with the idea of mediumship. I might hold that back a little bit and focus on other aspects that I think would be more interesting. If it's someone who is asking me because, a family member just passed away, then I'm going to focus on the fact that life goes on, that the ties of love will always remain. So it kind of depends. I don't know. What do you guys think of this answer?
I think it's great. I think that we all agree that there is, and we often talk about this, right, in the spirit circles. There's definitely a scientific component to it. Like there's a methodical approach. There is a philosophical piece, kind of like Suzana said, around the idea of making sense of all the information we received. And there's obviously a moral component to it, which is how we put that in our lives. How do we make that useful? And so I personally like to avoid the direct translation from the French and the Portuguese, which often uses the word doctrine, because I think that in the U.S. and in English, the word has a little bit more of a dogmatic feel to it. Like, it's a belief system. I think it goes beyond that. So I like using the term body of knowledge. So it's a body of knowledge that studies and deals with the origin of spirits, of us, like who we are, where do we come from, where do we go to, and how we relate with this whole spiritual and physical piece. But I also struggle, like you said, with this whole definition, right, of what it is and how to communicate that to people in a way that they can understand it, even though it's such a big body of knowledge with so many different things out there, and making that basic. And I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that I always get asked, like back to, is that are you Christian? Is that a church? Are you Christian?
Right.
So how do you take that? How did you guys deal with that?
I'll start, and I'm curious about Suzana's approach as well. So when folks ask if it's a church, I usually try to explain them back the meaning of the word church, right? Which is the gathering of people, gathering of folks. And then I try to delve a little bit into what we do there. We study, we get to know other folks as well, experiences, right? And that's an opportunity, like a door that opens up for me to talk a little bit about what we do out there at the Spiritist Center. Usually, watching lectures, receiving passes, energized water, all the spiritual treatments that we have at the Spiritist Center. But I want to go back to Daniel's point that the dogmas that we don't have, right? I think that's really what differentiates Spiritism from the organized religion per se, because we don't have any dogmas, we don't have any rituals, right? We go to the Spiritist Center, we use the regular clothes that we have in a day, we go out there, we study amongst friends, we debate, some topics, we interact, we talk, we get to know and to learn really from each other's experiences as well. I think this is a fundamental difference between Spiritism and organized religion. What do you guys think?
So you said something which for me is really interesting, and we were talking about this before, right? The difference between religion and organized religion. I almost feel that we have used the term religion to mean organized religion nowadays. Like when people say, oh, what's your religion? They are really meaning what organized religion are you a part of? Because for me, this is my understanding of my perspective, religion is your personal connection with the divine, the philosophy, the idea that you have. But then when we get together, the three of us, we need to negotiate our different perceptions of that, and we need to get organized. And then we start to codify things and put things together that may end up looking like what we originally thought, or may end up looking a little bit different over 1,000 years of people telling each other what it is. And so sometimes I think people feel like organized religion is the only way to go, and whereas I feel like everybody is religious in the sense that they have their own connection with the Creator or whatever it is. But that's my take, right?
Yeah, I think like we were mentioning before, there's a lot of people who are very religious without belonging to a religious organization. But, kind of going back to your question about what do I say, is it a church, right? Is it an organized religion in that sense? I say, it's a space for spiritual growth. And so we don't really have a hierarchical leadership per se, clergy, exactly. So anyone who comes and who's willing to study and to grow is going to be there, like Flavio said, sharing their knowledge, whether you were leading a group or assisting with the leadership of a group or just participating or doing lectures. So there is a place for spiritual growth. So we study, we have talks, we have different activities, but I usually put into this context.
Isn't that kind of confusing though?
Very confusing.
That we don't have like priests or clergy or whatever it is. Does that hold us back?
I don't think it holds us back. I think it brings us all more together, right? So the whole idea of all of us coming together towards the same goal, and I acknowledge that some folks may have a different interpretation of how to get there, but the goal is the same, guys. I mean, look at back the word religion means to reconnect, that whole binding with our Creator. They're all going to take us to the same place, which is closer to our God, right? To God, or to this supreme intelligence, this supreme force that really oversees the entire universe. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's there. It's taking us to the same place. But I also acknowledge that words can bring us together or put us apart. And depending on their definition of certain words, can really, break or make a relationship. It's really, 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 really difficult.
Right.
So where were we?
Well, we were talking about these definitions, and maybe we can go to extend the topic that we're addressing right now. We were also having a brief conversation before about the meaning of Spiritism in our lives, and maybe sharing a little bit of our experiences, what Spiritism means and has done to us. You want to start?
I'll start. While I acknowledge that it might be a little difficult to bring a before and after, since all of us were born in Spiritist families, I would say that Spiritism, being as dynamic as it is, it can give us different interpretation of things depending on how much we study, how much we know, how much we use that back to our lives.
But hold on a second. I'm going to stop us right here really quickly because I got to ask, what do you mean by being dynamic? What's dynamic about it?
It changes.
Sorry, I totally derailed us.
It's okay.
I totally
It
did.
changes as, science changes us, right? Even in the Spirits book itself, the Spirits have told Kardec, if the science goes in a different way, you should follow science.
Right.
So the way we see it is, it gives us the knowledge that we need for that particular time, and that's not all the way that's out there today. Right? Look at the whole evolution of Spirit's book, Allan Kardec's, baseline works, and other, books that have been published ever since.
Right, so before
It's increasing.
before I let you move forward answering the original question, so I just recently gave a lecture on the law of equality, and speaking about equality of gender. And one of the most puzzling things in one of the answers given to the spirits, by the spirits to Allan Kardec, is when the spirits say that yes, gender equality is definitely a sign of evolution of society. However, genders have different functions. Now, if you look at the function of genders in Kardec's time, it meant something completely different than what it means today. So how do you understand that, right? Not that we're going to talk about
Sure.
it, but I am talking about this in the context of the dynamic aspect of Spiritism and the evolution of the whole philosophy.
Maybe that's episode number 2.
No, yeah. I don't mean to bring it as a
Yeah.
topic for today. I
Yeah,
just mean to bring it as an illustration
Yeah.
for the fact that we are in a very dynamic philosophy or body of knowledge, that there are things that are evolving with evolution of science and our understanding and society and everything else.
That's a very heartfelt topic to me from my sociological background, gender, racism, right, society,
That's our
social
next
justice,
one, Flavio.
social
Hold on to
justice.
that.
I love those topics.
All right,
Let me ask you the
we-
question back. Who was the first feminist in the world?
The first feminist in the world?
Yes, who was the first person?
Depends on how you define feminist, but I got a strong case going for Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go, absolutely.
And in my gender equality lecture, I do talk about that. Now, just something really funny. Do you know that in Spiritist Review, Kardec actually asked in one of the articles that he wrote whether women have souls or not at that time?
Well, it's a great question, right? Not because we're not saying women don't, but because there were people who might have thought otherwise at the time. And so let's
Absolutely.
ask those questions so people absolutely brush this
Yeah.
aside because it's silly, right? It's just plain silly.
Yeah.
But let me go
Let's
back,
go back.
to the dynamic piece. I think, do you think it's fair to say that Spiritism started with Allan Kardec, but it hasn't ended there?
that
So
was just the
I guess
beginning.
what we're saying is a progressive body of knowledge in the sense that it keeps growing. The more that we observe of the world, the more that we make scientific connections, the more that we understand how it affects the spiritual world in our lives. It's more of a philosophical piece. The more that we apply it to our life, the more moral or religious piece, it keeps growing. So it kind of keeps shifting in that you keep adding to Spiritism, right?
As
It's
we've
spiraling
learned,
out.
as we've learned here this weekend in Atlanta, through the hands of Divaldo Franco, we've know that Spiritism is an analogy that was made. Spiritism is the beach that we get to. From there's the ocean. Right? There's a lot of things for us to discover, right? It's going to take us multiple, right? Hundreds of incarnations for us to learn all that. This is just the beginning. Right? It's a beginning that really gives us a lot of answers. It's a beginning that really opens our minds to a whole new sphere of things that otherwise they would have been, we would have paid attention to those things in the past. It's really a life-changing, opportunity, I'd say. I would love to understand, or love to ask some other folks that have lived in this incarnation, maybe a couple, 10, 20, 30 years without knowing Spiritism whatsoever, and then all of a sudden they became Spiritists. I'd love to hear those. Maybe it's a suggestion for the next episode.
Maybe it's chapter number 3.
Chapter
Maybe
number
chapter
three.
number
We're
two,
just
but-
keep adding, giving
Yeah,
ourselves
so
more.
let's go back to the original question, the very original question, which is we asked you, Flavio, to tell us about the impact of spiritual.
I'm not dodging the questions, guys. Don't
All
take
right,
me
all
wrong. I'm not dodging the questions, right? What I'm saying is it has a huge impact. In the terms of you can't deny, right, that you are a spiritual being, that you are a mortal being, right? That this is your only one step in your whole, ladder of
I
things.
can't deny that I'm a spiritual being all I want.
You can deny, but I cannot.
Oh, okay.
The
You cannot
moment,
deny it, okay.
the moment
Sorry, it has to
we-
be difficult. It has to be
No
difficult.
problem, no problem. The moment you open yourself to this type of knowledge, it's impossible to go back. Once you know how to
Is that a
know
good
how to
thing?
ride a bicycle,
Is that a
you
good
can't
thing?
say I can't ride a bicycle anymore because you don't unlearn it. Right? I think it's a phenomenal thing. But there has also a component, as Jesus even said himself, right? Each according to its own. The more we know, the more responsibility we have to do what? To pass on to people, to help others really see what we see.
Daniel, help him.
Help him.
Yes.
As you can clearly tell if you're listening to us, we are pretty free with each other here. We know each other for a while. That's why it's so fun for us to get together. And we hope that you're enjoying this. And if you are, let us know. We'll tell you a little bit more later how to get in touch with us so that you can ask questions maybe for future podcasts if we actually decide that this is worth doing, to be honest with you. But so I can talk to you about this question from my perspective, right? So I agree with you. I think it's Spiritism has the potential to be really powerful in one's lives in the sense that it changes the way you look at things. And I believe that when you look at things differently, they really are different, right? And so for me, even though I was born a Spiritist in a Spiritist family, it just kind of sunk in a little bit more when I was around 20 years old or so, when I was going through college and almost done. And I was having a great life, but something was missing, right? Something that fulfilled me to understand how things really worked. I remember some of the stuff that I did in the past with my parents, and so I got curious about it, started reading again, and really kind of start clicking more. And I noticed that a little bit more a couple of months ago when I was telling folks about my dad's passing. And my dad is such a phenomenal guy, such a central figure in my life, and actually the person who really introduced me to Spiritism in a more serious manner, right? And I was telling folks that when my dad passed a couple of months ago, I was really obviously sad and, kind of missing him and really feeling like it's really unfortunate I don't get to hang out with him the way I did. But I wasn't completely floored by it because I knew that inside my heart, I truly believed that our life goes on, that our soul goes on and life goes on, so that I was going to meet him again, that I was going to have the opportunity to talk to him again, and that he's somewhere that I might not be completely sure where right now, but there is love conquers all and keeps on going. And so I felt a little bad even, right? Because I was telling folks that maybe I'm a little bit of a sociopath. Maybe maybe I am not feeling maybe I'm in denial, or maybe I'm not feeling everything I should. Maybe I didn't like him that much because I am not completely depressed. So I thought it was a little bit weird.
Right.
And I'm still dealing with it. But then I thought it was pretty cool in the sense that that's the greatest legacy that he gave me, was the belief in life after life. And although the pain is there and I miss him,
Right.
I am not holding myself back because of that, because I know I'm going to meet him again. And so I wonder if 20 years ago, right, when I was younger, I'm 39 now, so if I were 19 years ago, before I kind of got back into really understanding Spiritism, or trying to at least, I don't know how it would have behaved. I think it would have been a lot more painful.
So when your grandparents or great-grandparents passed away, did you feel totally different from when
I
your
felt
dad
different. I felt
passed away?
different. Yeah, I mean, it really hurt me, even though obviously they passed when I was young, relatively young. I think it was kind of harder in a way because I didn't have a sense of I'm going to see them again, or I know that life goes on. It was more like I'm never going to see my grandparents again. So it hurt. My dad, obviously, I still miss him. I had a chance to actually being there close to him as he passed, and I thought it was really a blessed moment for me. It's the best thing I could ever ask for as a son. Right there. But it was different, And I think because I'm so close to my dad and I love him so much that it would have hurt more than it did. And maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe like 6 months from now I'm going to break down and sob uncontrollably for hours and hours and hours. But it was not as harsh as I thought it would be, because I feel in my heart he's not gone.
Yeah, I think you touch a lot of really important points there. You start when you said that things sort of clicking differently when you start reading a little bit more. It's interesting because I was doing my work here in the United States, and at some point, through a medium in Brazil, I actually received a message where the spirit told me, "My daughter, you need to start reading more." And it really called my attention for the fact that, if I was going to do the work, that I really needed to read. And reading play an incredible role in actually helping Spiritism because again, when I was 20, I believe in everything that I believe now. I was full force Spiritist, but it seems like that the more you read, the more you engage, the more you're into the work, but particularly educating yourself, it kind of gets deeper and deeper into you and becomes this force, really, like a very solid ground that you feel you're walking over every day.
That's the lens you're talking about.
Let me play devil's advocate, right? Because when I was 20 years old, I was going through engineering school. I had no time to read Spiritist books. Spiritist books. I had no time. I had, a lot of, college books to read. A lot of work. I went through school while working.
I did that on my 30s.
I had no time whatsoever
Yeah.
to read Spiritist books, right? I think your
You started last
priorities.
year, Suzana? You started
Yeah,
reading it last year?
right.
2 years ago.
Cute.
2 years ago.
Very
27,
cute.
28,
You
28.
guys are.
So back to the point, I had no time to study. I think in our own lives, there's some moments where you need to focus on, your profession, your education, the things you need to do, to take care of your life. And then there's a time, as happened to all of us, right? That you shift back okay, what am I doing for Spiritism, right? What am I doing for my own personal and inner growth? Okay, I need to read more, I need to study more, I need to be more charitable, I need to do more social volunteering. Whatever it is that, really rings your bell, right? In terms of what makes your day.
Sure,
The
my
calling
point.
is it's different from each one of us.
Sure, absolutely. So what I was doing is just sharing my experience, right? And recently, I actually told a young girl who is in the Spiritist movement of Florida, and she's in her early 20s, and I said to her, look, when I was 20 years old, I had just gotten here, I was 24 when I arrived in Miami, and just like a year later, some friends invited me to open a Spiritist center. And I said, there is no way. I knew what opening a spiritual center meant. And I was 24, 25 years old, and I knew that the first thing that I needed to do was study and settle my life here. And so I passed that on. So actually, this whole thing with the reading happened in my life in my 30s. But my point was more in terms of like, we all have been spiritualists our entire lives, but today, it feels so different. The impact of Spiritism in my life is completely different than when I was 20 years old or when I was 15 years old.
You
How do you
value in a
think-
total different way.
How do you think your life would be different today if you didn't have Spiritism?
Oh my God, I'm even afraid of thinking about it, seriously, because I have the sense that every day, Spiritism saves me from myself. It's not like from any, people love to talk about the obsessors, right? They are like the hot topic in any spiritual center. I don't care about the obsessors. I'm scared about myself, my inner.
You may be one of those obsessors.
I am. Oh my God, absolutely. So it just like, we were doing a lecture talking about obsession and like how the spirits can actually influence our thoughts. The thing is, the more I am in the work, the more I am studying, it keeps my mind going in some healthy wavelength, you know what I mean? And so I cannot think. I'm afraid of thinking what or where would I be without it. But going back to some of the comments that you mentioned in regards to your dad, I think that, when people, it's just a really nice feeling when you feel like, this life, and this is one great thing that Spiritists offer, the perspective that this, even though it doesn't feel this way, is a very short time. The more you start to think about life in terms of immortality, things change completely. So it's not just like, okay, I know that this is a short time. You really start feeling, this is a short time. Soon I'm going to be with my dad again. One way that it helps me is, for example, with you guys, right? So sometimes I think, oh my God, it would be so nice if all the people that I absolutely love in the Spiritist movement would be all together in one state, in one city, and better, in one Spiritist center, right? But then it would completely go against, the work that needs to be done. So, but I know that we are connected. And so when we meet again, right, it's like, hey, how are you, And I mean, nowadays, even more easy with the internet, Facebook, what everybody's doing, so you maintain the connection. But I think that Spiritism helps that too, helps me. For example, with my family, I have this very clear feeling. We were just having lunch because we're here in the Atlanta conference and talking about my husband, my wife, and during lunch. And in my mind, I was thinking, that's so funny, right? I mean, when we get to the spiritual world, how many my husbands and my wives are waiting for us up there?
A dozen or so?
Right, but I'm constantly working in this awareness. So that's one of the things that Spirit has helped me in the sense of when I left Brazil, I was 24, and my mom said to me, I know you're sad, but, you are not a citizen of this country. You're a citizen of the world. Go out and make a new family for yourself. So I actually, at that time, they were so painful, but today, I absolutely see this. I was born in a family. I have connections, deep and deep love, but there was a time to be there, everybody together. We are immortal spirits. Each one of us has a mission, an individual journey that no one else can walk for us, can do that journey for us. So now with my children, who are adopted children, I also have this feeling so clear. God landed me these two spirits and said to me, okay, take care of them for some years and then give them back to life. They don't belong to me. This sense is very clear that those spirits do not belong to me. They are with me in the way that I was with my family in Brazil. And it does not diminish in anything the love. It does not diminish in anything the connection. On the contrary, I feel like we are forever connected. They become part of a spiritual family. And I think that it makes it easier in life, lighter, in the sense that, one of the greatest reasons for suffering comes from attachment.
Yes.
Attachment.
And so with these words, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we were talking about how Spiritism has changed our life and what kind of impact it's had in our lives. And I talked a little bit about myself. Suzana talked a little bit about herself and how her family, she sees her family. How about you, Flavio? How's that for you?
Before I go into the topic once again, because I keep getting derailed into different great conversations as well, I want to say to Suzana that the thing that she and her wife did by adopting 2 kids, as we learn from Spiritism, it's one of the most beautiful things a human being can do, right? It's one of the most charitable actions someone can do. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, Flavio. I'll adopt you next life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about adopting him right now?
Right now.
His wife's going to like that.
So how did it change my life? I think it changed my life every day. The way I see things, the way I perceive the world, the way I interact with people, the way I see it. And it's always a question back to myself. What would it be if I did not know about Spiritism? Back to Danny's point, right? And I agree with everything that you guys have said. Every time something like this happens, and my parents are still here, every time a loved one passes, a close one of my friends, I have that comforting message that Spiritism gives us that we'll see each other again. I think that to me, it's one of the most comforting words or messages that Spiritism gives to people, is that a lot of religions out there, they promise the afterlife. We show it exists. We don't promise, we show it exists. Through mediumship, through communication, through letters, through mediums, through channeling, it's there. It's real. How many hearts have been blessed to hear or to receive a message, a letter from a loved one, with information that only that person, that particular person, had known beforehand? To me, that's the beauty of it. And I think the way it changes my life, it changes every day.
That might be in itself, sorry to interrupt you, the topic for another podcast. Because I imagine, people listening, people who are not spiritists necessarily, right? So, what does that look like in the spiritual center? So is there a place I can go and ask for messages for my loved ones? That kind of stuff. Because we actually do receive, I receive a lot of phone calls. Right now, my phone is the one in our center. So people call. I hear you have a group, and can I go? Do you guys give messages? That kind of stuff. So just want to mention that might be an interesting topic.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
There's lots of things for us to talk about: family, mediumship, and so forth. And if you're listening to us and you have your own questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll tell you a little bit more about, at the end of the program, how you can get in touch with us, and maybe we'll make your questions the next topics for our conversations.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So go ahead.
So,
Sorry.
I'm just still back to the original question. So let me go back to my first answer.
It's about time.
Lens
It's about
through which
time.
I, as a human being, as an immortal being, see the world, which I relate to, from folks that I have relationships with, all the efforts that I put into my own life, my own spiritual development. I think, to me, Spiritism is one of the most important things ever to me. Because the way I see myself as a person, I'm not just a husband, I'm not just a father, I'm not just a friend, I'm not just somebody else's, right? I have my own journey, as you mentioned. All of us have our own journeys, our own responsibilities. But to me, the comforting message that this is only one step in our very, very long evolutionary ladder of progression, I think it's very comforting to me. While it gives me a lot of calling for action, whereas trying to be a better person today as I was yesterday, what I'm going to do tomorrow that puts me in a slightly better place than I am in today. All these topics come to my mind all the time. I think that's to me what changes my psyche about my life, pretty much, thanks to Spiritism. Does that answer the question?
Sure.
Maybe
Better.
not.
He did a
Yes,
better
if you
job
want-
now,
if you
yes. Yes.
But so we can kind of come full circle and ask, so do we have a better sense now than 30 minutes ago whenever we start talking around what Spiritism is? Are we better able to define and communicate it?
You know what?
Is that important?
Yeah, you know what came to my mind is actually open a contest. Define Spiritism in less than 100 words and ask people. I mean, I'm saying 100, maybe 50 words, whatever.
We can
you
go
know,
140
and see-
characters.
Yeah, in
Twitter.
your own words. You cannot, it's not go to what is Spiritism, open the book and say what Kardec says, but how would you define today? It would be interesting to see what people comes up with. I don't think it made it any easier, Daniel.
No,
No.
I think it's
I
hard,
don't
right?
think, yeah.
It doesn't make it any more complicated either. I think it's still, it's a personal thing, right? We know, it changes people's lives. We know there's a huge comforting message behind it. There's a huge calling for all of us to study more, to your point, read more, get to know more about ourselves. Because at the end of the day, guys, I think that I'm the one that gets the most benefit from studying Spiritism, from practicing Spiritism, from becoming a better person.
If you go back to some of the definitions that we find in Kardec's, right, work, so, it talks about, it's a science and a philosophy that explains, our origin, where we come from and where we're going and the reasons for our sufferings. So I think that speaks, to a lot
Well,
of the
to it.
things that we did talk about. Because if you understand the meaning of life, so basically what it does is explains the meaning of life, the reasons, really, what we're doing here, why are we undergoing all these suffering, and where we are going from here.
But look at all these philosophers, sorry to interrupt, but look at all the philosophers from the past 100, 200 years, Immanuel Kant,
Yeah.
Aristotle, they all spoke about the meaning of life.
Aristotle is a little bit older than that.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe 500 years older, 2,000 years older. Yeah, again, the modern philosophers, right? Immanuel
Right.
Kant and Comte himself, Augusto Comte, all these guys spoke about the meaning of life.
True.
So let me ask a question to you, Danny. Do you think that Spiritism answers all these questions? To you, at least.
For me, it does, because it expands the sandbox, right? And what I mean by that, I think that we are playing, science in general and philosophy. We can, maybe this is another podcast, right? But history is philosophy, whatever it is. But I think that nowadays we have limited ourselves to seeking answers to things that we're that's only attached to the material world. We fail to recognize the presence of a spiritual world. And I think Spiritism does it really well. It bridges both worlds and explains how one is not exclusive of the other, that you can both have a strong scientific background and still have a strong religious piece, and you're not choosing between, I'm going to make horrible analogies here, but you're not choosing about creationism and science, right? Like both of them can kind of coexist,
Right.
and, we shouldn't take things literally from the Bible and that kind of stuff. But what I say by that is, I think because Spiritism goes into the spiritual piece and helps us understand that we have two sides to us, if so to speak, which I guess was what Suzana was talking about, like the definition that Kardec gives us in what is Spiritism, that Spiritism is a science which deals with the nature, origin, destiny of souls, and how it relates to the physical world, is great, because it tells us that, one, we're spirits before we're a body, and that's important. That's a major mind shift for us.
Absolutely.
Very big shift.
Because we think the opposite, right?
Very
big shift.
I am a body that has a spirit.
And let me just say that we still, even though we know that, and I constantly say that, that is far from being integrated in our lives,
get
in
caught?
our thoughts, in the way that we live. So I constantly give this example. We know we are immortal beings and the body is just a garment. However, our sense of worth remains so much tied up to the physical
It's
body.
what we see, right? It's what we see in front
It's
of us.
all that we see. So it's still like, and that's why I say, that Spiritism changed my life. But the more and more that this core concept of immortality alone, forget about anything else, just the idea that you are not this physical body, that you are a immortal spirit, the more that can permeate your life and be the driving force behind your perceptions and your actions, then you feel that Spiritism is really, really transforming you. But yeah, so I mean, I just want to comment on that because, you know, we're constantly saying, well, we believe that we're immortal spirits, and that's one of the main tenets. And yet the difficulty of integrating this very core principle of Spiritism into our daily lives.
So it's a good segue for what I was going to say before. When I was young, about 20 years old, very naive, very idealistic, thoughts, I thought that, hey, reincarnation is the solution of all problems. Because look, I've always had a passion for social justice, equality and all that. But if I believe that I'm going to be born next life in a different body, different gender, different race, different ethnicity, different everything, therefore, I can have all these behaviors, right? I can't really go along with society about treating people differently because of the sexual orientation, right?
Right.
Because tomorrow I'll be there, or social status, or race, or
Right.
whatever.
Anything.
Religion, everything, right? But then I was very idealistic to believe that, oh yeah, if I teach everybody reincarnation, voila, the world's going to transform itself into a pure... No, it's not, because sometimes we get caught in this mantra that society really convolutes ourselves to, that we get, oh, but hey, hang on a second. This is not who I am. This is where I am right now. This body here is where I am right now. That's not who I am.
Right.
So, again, food for thought.
Which is great, right? Which is back to the whole idea of, so that's why Spiritism is powerful, because it reminds us of our spiritual essence. Then it tells us that there's a creator, that's where we come from. And that in itself is a great conversation, because I feel like it's very much aligned to what you're saying. The concept of God, of being all powerful and all knowledgeable and all just, it's already, like if we unfold that, like we necessarily arrive at reincarnation, because it's the only way you can explain the justice or injustices in the world today, right? And how do we deal with interaction between the physical world and the spiritual world, and that there's possible actually to have these interactions with both sides of life? I think it blows my mind.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a fantastic, so much in there for us to unpack in just a couple of sentences. But it's really hard, right?
It is.
And I think we talked about reincarnation, which is a major tenet, I guess, of Spiritism that we didn't talk much about before, and is one of the things that differentiates Spiritism from spiritualism a little bit. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I get this question of, what is Spiritism? Is it the same thing as spiritualism?
We get it
Right.
also. The Northeast, that we get it
All the time.
All the time, yeah.
And I like to tell people, like, if we open the Spirit's book, the first book in Spiritism, we're going to see Spiritism, a spiritualist philosophy, right on the cover,
Yeah.
right? And by that, I think Kardec was really smart in using different words, and he starts his introduction, the Spirit's book, by saying, for new ideas, new words are meaning, so that we don't confuse things. And so if you're listening, you might have thought about this, but the idea of spiritualism is we all believe in something spiritual. All religions believe in something
Afterlife,
spiritual.
yep.
Something other than the physical body. The difference is that some of us, like Spiritists, believe in specific things within that concept, right? So for instance, we believe in reincarnation. And so all Spiritists would probably say that they believe in reincarnation, whereas not all spiritualists say they believe in reincarnation. We might all believe in mediumship, right?
Right.
Yep.
We might all believe in God, but we don't necessarily believe in reincarnation. So Spiritism is kind of like a subset of spiritualism, just like, technically speaking, all the other religions are also subsets of spiritualism. It gets more confusing, though, in the United States, because there was this movement called New Spiritualism that also happened in the 1800s, that was about mediumship and so forth. And it was referred to as New Spiritualism because it was about to bring it back to the original piece. But as it happens, it got shortened and it became spiritualism as opposed to New Spiritualism. And so it confused things a little bit more, right?
There's
And
something that we mentioned before very briefly, and we didn't actually talk about it, and maybe for another time, or maybe not, because one of the characteristics of Spiritism is to be a Christian, right? A Christian.
What is to be a Christian?
Wait. A Christian religion, so to speak. Well, we already talked about the whole religion thing,
that's
right?
got to be another episode.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we already
Definitely.
talked about, but you're talking about Spiritism and spiritualism, and so, when people are asking about Spiritism, they want to know, but is it Christian, right? And so what does it mean to be Christian? What is the meaning of Christianity in America? And, so that is a hot topic too. that I think we should
should
talk about.
investigate.
Yeah,
We should table it.
absolutely,
We should table it,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's coming up.
It's coming
We'll
up
do
soon.
it. Yes.
So at one point in time.
Yeah.
We don't know when, but it's coming up
Yes,
soon.
and if
Yeah.
you think that's interesting, let us know. We'll tell you how later.
Uh-huh.
But we were talking about Spiritism then, right? Reaching the almost end of our conversation here today about what is Spiritism for us. And we talked a little bit about what it means, and maybe you can tell us, if you're listening to us, what you think it means to be part of our conversation. And we talked about how it changed our lives and how it has impacted the three of us, at least. And let us know, too, if you have different perspectives and different things. We want you to be part of our conversation. And so, to wrap it up, would you mind sharing in under 30 seconds, what is it that you like the most about Spiritism? And what would you say to people who are looking to understand Spiritism, what we can bring into your life?
To me, Spiritism is about empowerment. If you're looking for something that gives you power back in life, you want to be in charge of your life and be in charge of your own happiness, I think that's one of the major strengths of Spiritism.
I think to me is, I've always been a very curious child, and my parents would say so. To me, Spiritism really invites us to question everything that we hear, that we listen, that we read. Does it make sense? Does it corroborate with your knowledge, with what's out there? And I think that's, again, also very empowering, opportunity. Give it a shot, guys. I mean, it's out there. Give it a shot.
And for me, I guess it has to do with understanding, too. I've always wanted to know how things connect and how things work. And I was never quite able to fully make sense of it until I came across Spiritism, and I was able to almost like open the back of a watch and see how the inner workings of a watch go. And so for me, it has given me tremendous pleasure in trying to understand why we are the way we are and what we can do to change ourselves. And I hope that those who come in contact with Spiritism and take the time to read it, because it's not a quick thing. You have to put some skin in the game, as Suzana was saying before. You have to study, you have to read a little bit, because it's a vast body of knowledge that's growing all the time. So that's a fantastic piece.
So, real quick, since it's growing, where'd you start?
That's going to be my next question. So, what's your suggestion for somebody that is just starting to get to know Spiritism or wants to get to know Spiritism? What should they read first?
I would say the Spirit's book, and if for some reason they want to do something else, Life Goes On by Andrea Lewis.
I mean, I usually tell people to start by the Spirit's book too, and just something interesting quickly. Like for instance, my partner, right, who's American, she has no interest in the works of Andrea Lewis. She's really not so interested in knowing the particularities, whether you take a bus or not in the spiritual plane, whether you eat food or drink fluids in the spiritual plane. She wants to know right now and here what can make her life better, what can help her to have more peace, So she's looking for more of a philosophical understanding. Of course, this is one person.
Mm-hmm.
But so that to say, you also want to see who you're talking to, where the person's coming from. But in general, I would say the Spirit's book.
Great. I think it's a great way to start. And I would say the introduction to the Spirit's book, I love it.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
don't skip the
absolutely.
introduction.
Don't skip it. Yes, good point.
And I would add, I think you guys said it all, and I would just say if you're not that into the philosophy piece, or you're not that curious about the scientific or the structure piece, maybe take a look at Heaven and Hell, which is a great book. The second part has some before and afters of spirits that have come back and told us how they live their lives and how they find themselves to be now. And 150 years of the book, so it's a great year for us to read that. And also the Gospels explained by Spiritism, which is a brief little pieces of interpreting Christianity, which is a topic for our next podcast.
Yeah.
So, parting thoughts, any last comments before we wrap our conversation up today?
This is awesome.
It was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
time. Even though you guys picked on me all the time, but I had a great time.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Me too. You guys have safe travels.